white just won a pawn. You're not taking it back, so white protects it. Greedy, understandable. And you offer them a second one. If they do, you're down a full pawn on move 4, on purpose. This is the Icelandic Gambit. That pawn is not a gift, it's a loan. White spent 3 of their first 4 moves grabbing and guarding pawns. You spent yours on pieces. Every move spent guarding that pawn is time. Black gets to build pressure, and this thing has a real name and a real country attached. Icelandic grandmasters Hannes Steffensen and Throster Thorhalsson played it into the books in the late 1980s. Not some internet trick. And here's what separates it from every trap opening video in your feed. You're not hoping white falls for something, you're making white prove something, one move at a time. If white defends with total precision, white keeps the edge, the engine has white a little over half a pawn up the moment the smoke clears, and that gap holds with accurate play. That's the honest price tag on this gambit. But the position charges by the move, not by the diagram. Relax once and the loan comes due. 3 missions. Collect all 3. Quick rewind, because the trigger matters more than the trick. After e takes d5, recapturing with the queen is a whole opening by itself. That story lives in our Scandinavian video. This is the other branch. Knight out, pawn ignored. You're telling white, keep it, for now. White has 2 honest options. Give the pawn back with d4, and that's the modern Scandinavian's main line. A normal game, a different video. Fine. Or hold it. c4 is white saying, I did the math, and I'm keeping it. White did do the math, this pawn is real, and it's not coming back for free. But c4 is also the only move that makes the Icelandic exist. The gambit doesn't happen because you forced it. It happens because white chose to defend the pawn instead of returning it, and now white has to keep proving that choice was worth it, move after move. There's the offer. Decline it, and materials even. Your pieces flow out naturally, and that d-pawn never got the chance to be a strength. It became a target and came off the board 2 moves later. The engine calls this one dead level, maybe a shade in black's favor. You did nothing weird, and you're not worse. Take it, and the loan is live. Quick check before we move on. That c4 pawn, your bishop on e6, is staring straight at it. Free pawn back, right now. Why not? Oh no. Look at f1. White's bishop hasn't moved all game, and it's guarding c4 through 2 empty squares. Take that pawn, and white takes your bishop. You just paid a full bishop to cancel your own gambit. That invisible defender is the whole point of mission 1. This opening is patience dressed up as aggression. Spring it when white grabs. Take the normal game when white declines. And never touch c4 just because it looks lonely. One more thing about that rule, because it isn't permanent, it only holds while that bishop can actually reach the square. Move it, pin it, overload it, and the square you were just told to avoid might be open again. Keep that in mind. We come back to exactly this later in the proof. You paid 1 pawn. Here's what it bought, and here's how you collect. One collection plan looks like this, not the sharpest try in the books. Engines meet knight f3 with the immediate queen e7 instead, but perfectly playable, and the clearest way to show the mechanism. Knight to c6, second piece out, already leaning on the square. White wants for their center. White finally builds the big center, and you hit it with a check. That's not free tempo just because it's check. A check that doesn't develop anything is just noise. This one's different. You develop a piece and force an answer in the same move, and the clock on white's king starts running. Blocked, with a piece white needed to develop anyway, so nothing's been spent blocking it. That light squared bishop though, still sitting on f1, still hasn't picked a square. Remember it. Where it ends up is going to matter. 1 queen move. Just one, parked on the e-file, the same file where white's king is still standing around. If you saw our Scandinavian video, you already know this rule, and if you didn't, here it is. Tempo is money. The queen comes out once with a job and stays put. And this is the move that makes the whole gambit make sense. Castling long here is an attacking move wearing a safety vest. Your king tucks away and your rook lands on the d-file in the same tempo, glaring at white's center. Count it. 2 knights, 2 bishops, the queen, a castled rook. 6 of your pieces have jobs. White has 3, plus a king on its starting square. That's not a repaid pawn yet, it's activity, and activity is only worth what it can prove. Mission 2 is a discipline, not a trick. Prefer moves that develop, pressure, or both, because the first move that does neither is the moment you stop collecting. Because here's the honest part, the part Gambit highlight reels skip, compensation expires. That head start is a window, and windows close. If white survives the opening, castles, and untangles, the position quietly becomes white is up a pawn and nothing else is happening. No refund. The debt gets written off. Watch how easily it happens. 2 little pawn moves. That's all it takes. H6 and A6, moves that feel useful and threaten absolutely nothing, and by move, 9 white is castled, developed, and up a clean pawn. Nobody cooked you with a brilliancy. You cooked yourself, one shrug at a time. There's a second way to blow the deadline, Gambit Brain. The window starts closing, panic sets in, and you start throwing more material at the board to keep the attack alive. No. The deal was 1 pawn for time. A pawn down with development is an investment. A piece down with vibes is a resignation with extra steps. So Mission 3 has no move to memorize. It's a clock. Through the first 10-ish moves, prefer moves that develop, pressure, or both. That's the whole rule. And if white finishes untangling anyway, stop attacking and start playing chess, HUD down the pawn, trade into activity, dig in. Sometimes that means you're a pawn down in the slightly worse middle game. The engine's honest number for the accepted gambit under precise play sits around half a pawn, not a disaster, but real. That's the actual price tag on every honest gambit. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. Here's what collecting actually looks like. And here's the moment where even a completely reasonable looking white move hands the loan back early. Like our first video's proof game, this is an illustrative demonstration, not a specific named Grandmaster game, and every move, main line, and branches has been replayed for legality and checked against a live engine, not just the tagged swings. 7 moves, and you already know them. This is exactly the Mission 2 plan, right down to the check and the queen's 1 move to the e-file. White blocked with the knight it needed to develop anyway, so nothing's been given up. The engine actually likes white more here than right after the opening gambit, over a pawn and a half if white finds the sharpest square next. That's the precise try. The dark squared bishop, the one that started on c1, comes out to e3. Same safe developing choice. Mission 2 showed you, solid, keeps the edge, and it leaves the light squared bishop sitting on f1 exactly where Mission 1 needs it, still guarding c4. But moving the light squared bishop instead, the one we flagged back in Mission 2, still parked on f1, looks just as reasonable, same develop and prep to castle logic, just a different piece doing it. This is where it finally lands. And it's already a problem? Your queen has been sitting on e7 since move 7, dead center of the same file as white's king. Put it on e2 right now and it's pinned the second it arrives. It can watch c4 all day. It just can't get there. Take it now, not eventually, right now. Castle first instead, and white's own bishop, still parked on e2, simply recaptures the intruder next move. The pin only holds while the king's stuck on e1, and white will spend a tempo breaking it the instant black stops threatening it. Wait 1 move on this and it's not a pawn 1, it's a whole bishop lost for 1. Mission 1's rule paid off exactly the way we flagged it. Check who's actually free to defend the square, not just who's pointed at it. The eval doesn't even move on this capture. It was already gone the moment white moved the bishop to e2. Bishop takes c4, just collects the receipt on time. White's cleanest option, not the only one, bishop e3 gives up almost as little, within a fraction of a pawn, but castling actually solves the problem instead of just delaying it. The king steps off e1 and the pin is gone. The pawn still doesn't come back with it. Except the bishop doesn't get to enjoy the freedom, black just trades it off. A fair trade, nothing won or lost in the exchange itself, the actual profit already happened 2 moves ago. And now black castles, same idea. Mission 2 showed you just 1 tempo later because getting the pawn back came first. White tidies up with h3, but that does not ask the bishop on b4 any question. So black's second rook finds the open file instead. Still collecting, pawn or no pawn. Pawn's back, and the engine actually likes black a touch from here. Not a winning combination, a refund with a small tip. And white's other bishop, the dark squared one, still on c1. Never moved all game. This is Mission 1's rule, and Mission 3's clock paid off together. The piece on e2 was only ever a defender while it could actually move, and black checked that the moment it mattered, not 2 minutes early, not 2 minutes late. So, is being a pawn down on move 4 actually losing? Only if you think the pawn was the point. It never was. The pawn was the price of 3 things: time, open lines, and a white army assigned to guard duty. Spring it only on greed, collect in threats, every move, no days off, respect the deadline, cash in before the window shuts, or fold back into a normal game and grind. White spent the whole opening protecting a pawn that didn't stay bought.